Listen Lanarkshire is a community radio station governed by the registered charity Getting Better Together Limited. Therefore, the radio station itself retains political neutrality, and any political views or comments aired as part of political discussion programming or otherwise are not the views of Listen Lanarkshire, nor of Getting Better Together Limited. The station has a set of key commitments found on the Ofcom website, and we adhere to all necessary Ofcom rules. For more information or inquiries, please contact us at radio@shotshealthyliving.com.
Good evening, folks, and welcome back to What's the Point, the only podcast where local politics gets properly roasted and no one's safe for a good grilling, even Jerry Brennan. I'm your host, Greg Lennon, broadcasting straight for the belly of North Lanarkshire's beast, Sonny Shots. And tonight, well, you're going to need a strong cuppa, because we're boarding the Councillor gravy train, Jerry, and it's pulling in fast. Mileage, claims, salaries, it would all make a corporate lobbyist blush. But who's paying for it all? That's right, it's you. So buckle up, taxpayers, you're in first class, but only to watch the bill arrive. No wonder we have no effective opposition in North Lanarkshire, Jerry. Then there's a wee game of musical chairs at the top, senior council officers disappearing faster than an SNP councillor at a November press conference. Retirements and promoted moves to a scandal-ridden South Ayrshire, not too dissimilar to here, Jerry. All this in the backdrop of a proposed governance review written by who? Officers! Suspiciously good timing, eh? Well, we'll also unpack what the council's quietly doing behind the scenes, the governance shake-ups, delegated powers, less scrutiny. Basically, if democracy had a do not disturb sign, it'd be hanging on the civic centre door. And yes, folks, the provost will still be using his Ouija board when determining the competency of a motion, as he clearly doesn't score them, Jerry. And of course, it wouldn't be a proper week in Scottish politics without a couple of wild cards. First up, we'll be discussing Megan Gallagher MSP story in the press this week. Megan is raging, Jerry, at the amount of money being spent in agency care staff, yet her former Tory group say absolutely nothing at council. Completely silent, nada, zip. Why would that be?
I wonder if it was anything to do with the Brexit vote, when all these European workers that used to come in and help us out just decided that it was, what did they call it? The harsh environment. The harsh environment, yeah. That's correct. But there's another big massive story this week as well. Pray tell, Greg. This was the Jamie Hepburn and his alleged assault on Douglas Ross, because nothing screams transparent, Jerry, like a government minister resigning. I think Douglas Ross should just have gave him a yellow card, cautioned him, and reported it to the SFA. That would have been it. That would be a bit of refereeing trivia there, Jerry. Instead, no, he's gone. He's fallen on his own sword. As soon as he said he touched his shoulder, that was it. So as the good folks can hear, I'm obviously joined by my co-host, Mr. Jerry Brennan. He's the self-appointed best bowler in the whole of Bells Hill. Second. The inventor of the cheesy Beano Toasty, and a man whose political scent is stronger than his aftershave. That is, of course, my old pal Jerry. How are you, pal? Greg, it's always an extraordinary pleasure to be here with you, and here we are again. Well, this is What's the Point, Jerry, where satire meets scrutiny and the gravy train meets the buffers. Choo-choo. Stay connected with us on all platforms, because obviously we're on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook and all the other lovely things that suit there. We're live tonight on 107.7 FM. Full episodes of the podcast are delivered every Thursday via wherever you get your podcast fee. And you can call in tonight. We'll be opening the phone lines as usual, Jerry. If you've got a point to make, a story to share, or just fancy putting a councillor on the spot, the telephone number is 07379 399 228. And I'll say that again, the telephone number is 07379 399 228. Now, just a wee quick disclosure. Last week we opened these phone lines, but the calls weren't coming through for whatever strange reason that was. So if you don't get through first time, keep calling. We will eventually pick it up, but we think we've solved the problem. And apologies yes, to those who took the time to do that. Apologies who did to call in.
Right, let's kick it off then.
Let's
kick it off, Jerry. I am interested in talking about the policy and strategy papers that have been presented for Thursday's Policy and Strategy Committee. Now, for anybody at all listening, policy and strategy is really where everything gets ticked off, checks and balances and the big governance aspects of the council, and we have a cheeky wee agenda item in there, number 9, Jerry. What is it?
It is a review of the council's democratic committee and decision-making governance procedures.
Oh, that sounds meaty, Jerry. So
one thing we need to clarify with the good folks at home is what the Policy and Strategy Committee is not. The Policy and Strategy Committee is not made up of all 77 officers, or all 77 members, sorry, nor is it even the biggest committee. It's not even one of the biggest committees.
Right.
There's only 25 elected members on policy and strategy. So it's a small committee, relatively small committee, but what it discusses and the decisions it makes in terms of North Lanarkshire's governance are pretty damn big.
So big decisions, Jerry.
Big decisions coming up.
So
in this one, for sure. So I have been trying to push through for the last wee while a review of the delegated powers or delegated authority to council officers.
What means for those good folks at home listening, Jerry?
It means that it's powers that by over the years, it's powers that would once have fallen to elected members to make a decision on, that's been delegated to officers of the council. And as I've explained, I think in previous weeks, there's some good reason for that. Yeah. It's not possible for elected members on the planning committee to go through every single planning application that comes through North Lanarkshire. That would just it would swamp officers. So for day-to-day operational decisions, it makes perfect sense that individuals with degrees in town planning, specialist knowledge, specialist qualifications in particular areas should make day-to-day decisions that affect the operations of the council.
Political areas, are they? So
no, I mean it's like
areas, anything at all really with it, day-to-day operations. We've not got an issue.
Greg, if you live in a 3-bedroom semi-detached and you want to put a dormer on your loft, or you want to build up your loft, you'll need a building warrant for that. So decisions like that should be delegated. Or if you want to put an extension to your garden area, that would go through planning, and a planning officer would come out and have a look at it. Elected members don't really need to be involved in that, right? But there are bigger decisions that are made by officers which absolutely impact on your council and which impact on an elected member's ability to provide the critical scrutiny role that they should be playing, and that includes the protection of the public pound. And within the delegated powers that officers have at the moment, there's not always a requirement for officers to even let councillors know when money has been spent on their behalf by officers, and that's all covered through
your delegated powers.
The delegated powers.
So that's similar then, because anybody at all that listens to this show will see a common thread. We always discuss at some point the idea of the councillors' involvement, especially in local government, has been eroded over the years, and it all seems to stem back quite critically, by the way, because I've did a bit of research in relation to this. There was when the COVID pandemic hit, there was a system set up called Gold Command, and the majority of powers were released under that to allow emergency responses and everything else, and that's absolutely fine. There was no issue that officers were best placed during that time to have the council's mechanisms and response in place to the pandemic. But what we've seen is none of the powers ever really came back. If anything, there was more powers bestowed under the current leadership and leader of the council, El Presidente, who passed these powers and authorised these powers. Now, I remember going back, because I viewed the video the other day, it was one of the first online meetings that we had, and it's available on YouTube, where I had raised a motion in regards to publishing the old Gold Command minutes and executive powers, etc. And the response and the reply I got back at the time was quite stark. especially for senior management and other people. And all I'd asked for was that if the pandemic rises again, which it did, it came back in a further time, if it was a case that we got any sort of lockdown or any of that kind of thing, that these decisions are made in conjunction with councillors, because again, having a councillor board or something like that, at least where representation of elected members could be, there could be a balance brought to that, and elected members are understanding of what powers have been delegated and what decisions are being made. But we didn't have that. That was completely shut down by the then monitoring officer. And for whatever reason, and again, the argument could be it's operational, etc., but there has to be a governance framework there.
Do you know, I had a look through the Audit Scotland website today and looked at the last report for North Lanarkshire, and I would advise members of the public to go and have a look at that, because it wasn't all great reading for North Lanarkshire Council, and as a council that we do many things really well: governance, accountability, knowledge of elected members. That knowledge of elected members actually was deemed to be a risk that had to be managed
by Audit Scotland.
Wow. Yes, that had to do with a number of things about elected member involvement, which possibly is one of the reasons why that we have this. The other one was around elected members' educational needs.
Right.
That they were not adequately trained and inducted to carry out their job properly.
Was that?
Yes. So, I mean, a lot of that falls to the individual elected members themselves.
Surely it falls to the council groups to make sure that their members are up to date and up to speed.
So. One of the interesting things about that report is there's an action plan.
Right.
And there's dates for actions to have been implemented.
So within this report, the officers have written this. It's come and take it back in.
Well, this one's been written by...
No, but this I'm talking about the scrutiny report.
Oh, this one? Yeah, yes. That's the audit and scrutiny report. Item 9 on the agenda for Thursday's meeting.
By officers. Is there any mention within that report, Jerry, about working with councillors to devise the best position, working groups or any of that kind? Because we like our officer member working group in that council. Is there any mention of that?
So there's loosely, I would say yes, but I think what it sets out is that and this is not surprising, the review will be led by the Chief Officer of Legal and Democratic, working collaboratively with subject matter experts across the relevant services. So to me that just means more officers, and critically with elected members to shape the future governance framework.
And with elected members?
With elected members. Now, what it doesn't say is that there will be shared responsibility or that the working group will be co-chaired by an elected member.
Right, so not even the leader of the council?
It doesn't look, to my reading,
deputy
as
leader
if...
of the council?
Nope. So it's not quite clear exactly what role elected members will play. And there's a wee action plan at the back which probably creates more confusion, Greg, than clarity.
Right.
I don't know if you want to jump onto that now.
I'm intrigued. Go.
So there's 4 phases of this review, if you like, of the Council's Democratic Committee and Decision-Making Governance Procedures. But it doesn't look as if the review or the implementation of these 4 phases is going to take place anytime soon, because the final stage of this is December 2026.
So just before the council elections.
Just before the next council elections in May. So by the time the report is written, the final area of the report, the final phase 4, will be December 2026. We'll be on leave for the Christmas period. We'll have one council before we break.
So just for the good folks at home, normally in the run-up to an election, I would say normally about 6 months in the run-up to an election, majority of councillors, MSPs, everybody else, it's all into electioneering mode. and everybody's out there trying to obviously win your vote to get re-elected or get elected in the first place. So really, in effect, if you're calling for this report to come back, who's going to be available to scrutinise the final outcome? And what happens if there's anything at all that could potentially be deemed by elected members as political within it? Because ultimately that timeline, that we come back to this again, Jerry, where my concern lies, that timeline's devised by officers. There's no members who've devised this timeline.
No. Well, none of this has come from an elected member,
so
as I understand
nothing
it.
at all.
So let's just go through phase one, right?
Yep.
Just for talking's sake. And that's foundations, governance systems and access.
Yep.
So the key activities and outcomes, the democratic manager to provide a chronology of incremental updates and evidence of existing improvements since 2018. So we're only talking about the improvements that have been made,
yep,
rather than looking at it objectively. So we're leaning immediately to the positive. Democratic manager, again, to provide detail of how the council's practices have already evolved, e.g. digital accessibility, publication standards, again very, very positive and
yep,
not necessarily objectively. Options appraisal for the CMIS and Mars successor system, focusing on usability, accessibility and integration with digital platforms. A pilot of electric voting in selected committees, with training and support for elected members. See, if that's the reach,
yeah,
of, and the what's the word that I'm looking for, if that's as far as we're going to go with elected members in phase one,
yeah,
that we can help.
Or our ambition.
Our ambition is to help elected members hit a button, to say, well, rather than saying motion or abstain, or no.
The bit that I find curious in the paper.
By the way, there's nothing about elected members in that.
But nothing in the paper.
Nothing in phase one. So phase one, April 2026, we'll have the checkpoint of the best value alignment, and we'll have an initial assessment of compliance with best value, governance and accountability, and they're going to report on in April 2026, so next year.
So a legitimate question could be then, for anybody at all listening at home, why are you electing a councillor? Because it looks as if the officers are doing everything. What legitimately are you electing an elected member for? What, to deal with what? Because again, if you look at that paper, within that paper it says it's a citizen-led response, a citizen-led governance structure, and it wants you as normal people listening to this radio show tonight to take part in these processes so that our council becomes more transparent, more engaging, etc. But for those good folk who listen to this show regularly and also follow the podcast online, you would have seen the last number of months certain petitions being brought forward to this council, and these petitions are basically blocked at every stage. They are shut down at every stage. They are ejecting members left, right and centre for raising petitions on behalf of their electorate, and all of a sudden we're taking this stance that this is going to be people-led now.
Yeah, I mean, it's phase two, which is June 2026, is around engagement and accessibility, right? So we're going to review of committee minutes to improve clarity, accessibility and public understanding, including plain English templates and summary formats. Assessment of committee questions, log to ensure it strengthens accountability and meaningful scrutiny. We've still not mentioned elected members in this section yet. No. Review of the petitions process, Greg.
Oh, funny that.
To assess accessibility, transparency and effectiveness in enabling public participation.
Dead easy at that point, Jerry. I can even make the recommendation to whoever is going to be conducting this, why no just take it straight to committee? Why no do that? Full council, even better still, let's get it in the chamber, let's have a debate in relation to a petition. And again, let's re-look at how many numbers are required for that petition as well, because if you recall, there was one in relation to road bumps, something coming out a while back at the very early stages of this, and I think it had about 5 petition signatures, and that get rushed all the way through to committee and everything else in a response. But the rules surrounding committee and petitions is just absolutely farcical. There is no doubt about that.
So they're going to consider thresholds, clarity of guidance, support for petitioners, feedback mechanisms and alignment with best practice in participatory democracy. All of this in line with openness and engagement, SIPVA Principle B, and best value expectations on transparency and public accountability. No mention of elected members. So we're now.
So they're not even coming to the guys submitting petitions.
We're at June 2026.
Right, my goodness.
Right. And then we go to phase 3, which is decision-making principles. A review of decision-making principles to ensure motions, amendments and related processes are clear, fair and consistently applied.
Clear, consistent. So there'll be a benchmarking, or there'll be a matrix, Jerry, to score motions with.
I wouldn't go that far.
Surely it's not a closed door with just the Lord Provost and the monitoring officer. Surely it's not that.
We're now at next October, so we're at October 2026, and the checkpoint, or the SIPVA alignment, the best value SIPVA alignment, is that we'll review against SIPVA Principles C and D, defining roles and responsibilities, ensuring effective decision-making, scrutiny and accountability. Now,
so again, you've got a 2-year process to either A, tidy up your act in relation to how you're engaging with the wider public and their grievances. In addition to that as well, elected members that put forward motions and amendments, well, I take it, is there anything in there about the 24-hour rule, Jerry, for an amendment?
No, well, there's not, but it goes on to say there's going to be a development of guidance for members and officers on competency, framed around principles of transparency and accountability. Now, my take on that immediately is that there is nothing at the moment framed around the principles of transparency and accountability, and therefore the provost or the convener can deem whatever the hell they like in terms of competency. So you can bring forward any motion that you like, and if a convener doesn't want to put it through, or if the provost doesn't want to put it through because it's politically
so again,
difficult.
Just for the good folk at home, motions are what gets put forward by elected members, their political groups, whoever it may be, and they can put forward these things to make change in the council. So can go back to examples where the workforce, NLC 9, or else even recently with the classroom assistants. Anybody that watches the show would have heard last week, when we proposed a motion or an amendment to the paper, we were completely shot down and told 24 hours notice has to be provided to the committee convener to allow that on the agenda, which in effect really allows the administration to seek every bit of advice on how to shoot that down, or better still, go to the opposition and ask them to put forward a proposal to counter it.
Greg, have you been asking for consideration of approaches to handling non-competent matters to help balance openness and fairness to members?
Yes, since 2020.
Why on earth has it taken until now for that to happen?
Do you know something?
You would think something had happened. You would think that we were in a really important position this year, that the administration would want to be seen to be doing something.
Funnily enough, there was a couple of things that I was looking at today. I was thinking to myself, Jerry, is this a case because the Ferret did an expose on North Lanarkshire Council, which you'll recognise as well, where North Lanarkshire Council was ranked at the bottom out of 29 councils, especially for education, health and communities. Every single thing was near the bottom. Well, services collapsed and the administration is basically hiding behind modernisation, and that was the argument coming for the Ferret, right? Now, I was thinking to myself, would that be it? Would the article for the Ferret exposing how undemocratic North Lanarkshire Council has become, would it be that maybe guided them into it, Jerry?
Well, I think it's partly that. That would be really embarrassing for the leader of the council, when by virtue those in the higher echelons of the officer class as well, because
you're saying it would be very embarrassing. If you look at that report's all roses and light. Look how fantastic we are. We're bringing this governance structure forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Evidence of existing improvements.
Well, you've got an independent expose for the Ferret actually criticising every aspect to how North Lanarkshire Council has been operated and ran for its administration.
Yes.
It's a bit strange.
I think there's also, I mean, it must be, I think it
must be something else.
I think it could be the fact that this year our chief executive is the chair of Solace.
What is Solace, Jerry?
Well, you can share what that is, but it's a common grouping of leaders of local authorities. And it's quite a prestigious.
It's a very prestigious role.
It's like heading the UN, for example, for the year.
Model UN.
So our chief executive is honoured in doing that, and I'm sure the leader of the council and the administration are very proud of that.
Oh, of course.
But how bad would it be if...
Well, at the same time, the first an expose here how bad the council is, you've rushed through a governance structure.
Absolutely, and if anybody peered in the North Lanarkshire window and looked at the governance structures and went, oh no,
But that governance structure is no recommended or being requested by an elected member. It's just an officer paper that's came forward. The timing is quite...
The time is impeccable. The time is impeccable because
quite fascinating.
I've been asking for a review of delegated powers.
Yep.
And it's been refused.
Since when have you been asking?
I've asked twice. It's been refused twice.
And you've submitted motions in that ground.
I have, and I didn't even bother. I was going to put in an amendment for this council coming up, but I didn't bother my shirt because I saw this. Right? And what would happen is, even if my amended motion was accepted,
you would be deemed not competent.
It would fall as soon as this report, which is for
Thursday.
It's for approval, excuse me, it's not for noting, it's for approval, then my motion would fall. So I never bothered my backside.
Do you agree with the wording of the former MP Stephen Bonner, who was reported in saying that this council is nothing but an officer-led council? Is that a fair criticism?
It's fair in as much as if you read the Audit Scotland report, they mentioned that things appear to be officer-led, and that's one of the areas of risk that needs to be addressed. So it's...
our experience isn't it appeals, our experience is really that's it, because again we've submitted countless motions and really in effect Lord Provost refuses these motions, refuses to give any scoring, refuses to give the real reasons in relation to any competency, and everybody just seems to be okay with that. There's no opposition outrage. And if you look at other councils, and we had Neil Finlay on this show, if you remember.
Neil was quite open about
the fact that if it was a case that this happened when you were a councillor, we'd be up in arms, we'd be absolutely furious that being dictated the fact that elected members are elected to represent their constituents and have that voice of the people. But it seems to me as if it's been neutered in North Lanarkshire.
There's been two major contract awards, and I'm not harking back to old issues, but they're really important, and they're not that far past in North Lanarkshire history. But in both those areas, Audit Scotland was pretty scathing about when they looked into it. Not suggesting that there was fraudulent behaviour, but there was mismanagement. So they were really clear that there were areas for us to improve. And I think as elected members, when we were digging around, we were forced to go down the freedom of information route. We received reports that were redacted. We asked for reports that...
the council was never ever very forthcoming with information for us, whether they wanted us to go down official channels with everything and wait 21 days.
But what it didn't allow us to do was then to have all the information that we needed to ensure that the public pound was protected and that we as elected members had our chance to be the critical scrutiny body.
If you really look at it at that time as well, there could be the argument of the allegation made towards the council of political bias, because again our political group was refused any briefings. I think we're still refused briefings to this day. We're not allowed. But then again, this takes me on to an interesting point in a minute. But we're not allowed any briefings or anything like that coming. We can't just call for an officer to come in for a chat with a group and that kind of thing. Whereas other political groups in North Lanarkshire can call them in for information, especially before a committee. Ask them any point in the agenda and give them a briefing, etc. We don't have that luxury. So it could be a reasonable allegation presented that there is political bias taking place in North Lanarkshire. Under the stewardship of Jim Logue, the leader, let's not kid on about that.
We must salute our president as we speak.
But that leads me nicely into the next point.
You can't jump because we're not finished, and I'll tell you why.
Going on. Right, go.
Phase 4 Greg.
Oh, I forgot.
Now this is a Fred Flintstone moment, right? This gives you this this lets you into a wee clip, right? So we have to suggest, even by the language that's used in this, that the scheme of administration and delegation and standing orders are prehistoric. They're prehistoric because phase 4, which is going to report back towards the end of next year,
right,
is going to be that we will have a fully modernised set of standing orders framed around clarity, proportionality and accessibility.
As opposed to the ones they've amended to kibosh any democratic debate
beautiful.
in the chamber. So standing order 50 might be up for debate. Is it a case of the 24-hour rule for
no debate in here? We'll have no debate in here.
No debate in here.
Absolutely.
24 hours before that's amended.
Absolutely.
And they can't hark back to the December 2024 standing orders that they amended to ensure that elected members had no debate in that chamber.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So it's quite disgraceful actually now that the administration are bringing this forward. Full modernisation from Fred Flintstonian time of standing orders framed around clarity.
Do you think they're clambering then? Do you think the administration's clambering to try and stop perhaps the Chief Executive being embarrassed in that role as solace chair? That to try and present North Lanarkshire Council in some way is actually a democratic process that's no kind of tailored by the Labour group to ensure that any political discourse doesn't take place. Because if I was the Chief Executive, I'd be quite embarrassed.
Right. See, phase 2 this, right? Well, it's phase 4, but it's phase 2 of phase 4.
Yeah.
This would suggest that by refusing all these opportunities to review the scheme of delegation for whatever reason, that they're all refused by the provost and have been. But now all of a sudden the review and update of the scheme of administration and delegation will ensure proportionality and alignment with the council's leadership and operating model, which suggests that it is not in line with the council's leadership and operating model at the moment.
Do you think that come the next council term they need to get their ducks in a row, Jerry? Because if they've not got their ducks in a row come the next council term and it ends up being independents and all these different smaller political parties coming in, they're not going to be the majority group anymore, and potentially Keir Starmer's popularity is going to actually do them all in Scotland. Is it a case that they're just trying to cover their tracks that come 2026, 27?
I think that report, that action plan at the back is quite an indictment actually on where we're at. That Audit Scotland report, elements of it are quite an indictment. The Ferret report is quite an indictment, and I think all of those things combined makes this review very, 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 very late in the day, but absolutely necessary. And it should have been chronological. We should have been moving over the years to ensure almost every year that we reviewed all of that.
The opposition groups, no input for anybody. It seems to be El Presidente just gets his will as usual.
There's tacit there's tacit reference to elected members in this report. As I see it, it's tacit.
Aye. So that leads us nicely into a segue then, Jerry, because the other point I was wanting to discuss tonight is we seem to have had a mass exodus of senior management in North Lanarkshire all the wee while.
Absolutely. I thought it was your aftershave.
Well, listen, as I say, Brute and Old Spice are still very, very popular within a certain age group. But the point that I would make in relation to that, Jerry, so this week alone we've seen two newspaper articles come out, or last week, sorry, two newspaper articles, or today one came out for Andrew McPherson, who's retiring for North Lanarkshire Council.
A relatively young man.
The Assistant Chief Executive, a lovely guy.
Aye.
But in addition to that, there's a point I'll make on him in a second, right? And then last week we've seen that the Corporate Communications Chief Officer is now moving over to South Ayrshire Council to take on the Chief Executive's position, which is, again, South Ayrshire's mired in scandal, so we can't escape that. But that'll be quite a difficult task for him to go out there and try to clean that up a bit, I'm sure. But the interesting point about the Andrew McPherson one resigning is, who's our single point of contact now?
Well,
it's a single point of contact.
Do you know that single point of contact? I asked for a single point of contact in another motion that I put forward, and the response that I got was, you've not cited how much that's going to cost. A single point of contact is an operational responsibility, attracting a cost to it. And we got it for free.
Did we? That's good.
We got it for free. Nobody raised that as a motion to say we're going to withdraw your ability to have. We're going to appoint that, and we'll not give you the cost. But anyway,
over the past year, we've seen the departure. Even at the start of this year, we've seen the departure of the head of finance. We've seen the council's most senior legal advisor disappear. We've also seen.
Do you want the list?
Let's go for it. Let's get the list out. I think there's about 12 or 13, is there no? Senior members of staff.
I've only been a councillor for a wee while,
right,
Greg, right? But I've been around senior management teams for a long period of my working life, and we jokingly call this the Exodus. Right? And it's biblical in its size. Because right now there's 14 chief officers in this council. Some of them holding statutory roles. But of those, so there's 14 now. Do you know how there's been 12 senior chief officers who have left this council over the last 2.5 years?
Wow.
Almost the entirety of that cohort. And that should be worrying for any organisation when you lose that number of individuals, and B, the years of experience that they have acquired. And if I was Jim Logue, I would be, a motion that I would be bringing to council is that we have a review and an investigation as to why we cannot retain our staff for. It's no
at
least through a council period.
It's no similar to Glasgow, is it? No, everybody's walking away with enhanced payments and all this kind of thing, which was reported in Glasgow, because Glasgow's obviously still in the throes of the aftermath of that, with our chief executive and various other people were taking significant chunks just before they left the council. I take it, is this happening?
Thank God that Scotland had a few comments to make about that too. There's been two sizable awards that were made in recent times in North Lanarkshire.
Contract awards?
Not sizable. No, they were sizable pension payments to senior officers who decided that they were leaving for one reason or another. Why that's the case, I've no idea. I worked for the same organisation for 22 years, but when I left, it was my decision to leave. So why should you receive?
Well, when I was first elected in 2017, I think at the tail end of that, coming up in 2021 perhaps, or perhaps maybe a wee bit earlier than that, there was a major news story about the then head or chief officer for social work who walked away with just shy of £1 million practically. And then we had the education chief officer at the time as well. She disappeared, and again well publicised, and she walked away with a significant chunkable package at that point as well. So it seems to be that within North Lanarkshire that we've just lost a significant talent base, if you ask me.
Well, I think the big projects that the council were working, the enterprise project was probably the biggest project that the entirety of the council has worked on, officers in particular. But it looks as if now that we've crossed that bridge, that people are tailing off. We've achieved what we set out for that, and now we can leave. So Keith Brown, who was chief exec, left back in 2023, I think it was. He went. So he was deputy chief executive, and
Derek Brown,
sorry, not Keith Brown. Keith Brown's my apologies. Derek Brown. And then Andrew McPherson took over for him. So we've had two chief executives in that time, and now Andrew sadly is going to be moving on. Competent officer. Very
competent. I actually did always see Andrew as potentially being the next chief executive of the council, and I would have welcomed that.
I think most people did. A very reasonable guy, easy to communicate with.
Very easy to communicate with.
Archie Aitken, the previous
the monitoring officer.
Previous monitoring officer. We'll not say too much about him. Elaine Kemp, the Chief Finance Officer, Section 95 officer. Brian Lafferty, Housing Property. Ken Adamson, Audit and Risk.
I've got a point to make on that one. Now, you look at that. You've had an officer leave to go to South Ayrshire, which is a promotion. Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to them. Wishing them well. Derek went to Highlands. Andrew's retiring. Others seem to be moving on or retiring completely. But that individual that you're talking about, there was no fanfare for that individual. They just packed up a desk and left. Ken? Aye.
Still don't know what happened to Ken. He vanished.
That was very, very strange, because if you look at the press releases that have been put out for, as I say again, Stephen Penman, who's the chair of press and communications, and then Andrew leaving, big fanfares, thanks very much, he's been absolutely brilliant, but yet Ken Adamson left without even as much as an internal email. Two
chief officers of education, like one after another, Jerry McLaughlin and Jenny O'Neill, Ross McGuffey, social work, John Ashcroft, Katrina Hassel. It's like all of these competent individuals skills have decided for one reason or another that their future lies elsewhere. So I think that's worrying for North Lanarkshire Council. Personally, anytime you lose that number of senior officers to any organisation would be of concern for me.
Surely somebody should be asking the questions about that within the council. Who's asking it? Is the opposition asking it?
I would imagine that the opposition would be climbing on the back of that, because it can't just be us who have noticed that.
Funnily enough, I think I might have an answer on why the opposition.
I can't wait to hear that.
And I think I might have an answer why that really in effect we're delegating all authority and everything else that seems to be taking place in this council. Because again, Jerry, we did a clip last week in relation to mileage and expenses and that kind of thing. Now, all we did was go into the council website and basically take it off for the figures of that year, and then we made a small clip and that became viral on TikTok and stuff like that. One of the questions that was posed in there is councillor salaries, but it's councillor salaries. And do you know something? That was something that got me thinking as well, because again, we've a producer for this show who makes clips and videos and all that kind of stuff for us, and he was actually asking me the question, much is it an actual councillor gets paid, Greg? Because really in effect, if you think about it, it's quite a big job and lots of things are involved in it, which got me thinking, right, okay, let's take a wee look at that. So, within our council, basic salary for an elected member is roughly about £25,982. That's per year. It's not a wage, because we don't work for anybody. We are remunerated. So we're not deemed as an employee, we don't have any workers' rights, we don't have anything at all, and we're elected every 5 years based on your opinion. So, and I always make a joke, it's the hardest job interview you ever go for, and you're constantly up for review.
Yes.
That's basically it.
You're only as good as your last case, actually.
Now, if you look at the way the council operates, you have then got on top of that 25,000, the leader of the council, rightly so, will get a significantly enhanced payment, right? So that currently works out about, and if my calculations are right, because it was all information I could get off the interweb, he'll be walking out with about roughly £61,000 per year.
Yes.
He has a deputy leader, and that deputy leader gets a 25 but an additional payment, which is 75% on less that, or no, 75% of the leader's salary. Right. And then you get the provost again, 75% leader's salary, and that takes these two to roughly about 45,000. These are guesstimates, by the way. Don't take us for.
No, they're not to the penny, but they're right? Give or take 2,000 or 3,000 each way.
Then you have a deputy provost who gets an additional bung in there as well. He gets an additional sort of £18,000 for being the deputy provost. And then just your standard convener. Your standard convener will get anywhere between £10,000 and £20,000 really, and tapping at 25, taking them up to 35, 46,000.
Yep.
But Jerry, what I also noticed is I done a wee deep dive in relation to the amount of councillors that work for MSPs and MPs.
Did you have your scuba gear on?
Well, do you know something? Funnily enough, I'm still trying to clean my snorkel. Right? Wow. So then it goes
murky
thinking,
waters.
Then I get thinking, if you look at how the opposition acts in this council. Now, we've highlighted this for the day we started this podcast.
Very quietly.
About salaries. Very quiet. Jerry, salaries. Yeah. We highlighted the fact that the leader of the opposition gets... Now, the others, let's be honest about this. You have Sandy Watson in there, who's the convener of audit and scrutiny.
Leader of the Conservative group.
Leader of the Conservative group. He gets an additional enhanced payment for being the convener. So again, 25 grand basic salary, and then about 10 to 15,000 for being the convener of audit and scrutiny. Now, you can understand why Jim Logue would want him in that position, because it looks good for him that there's an opposition councillor and leader of the opposition group, Tories with 5 councillors. They're kind of leading audit and scrutiny, but when you 12 down into audit and scrutiny, they have very little teeth in that committee. It's not really anything at all. If you look at your review and governance process, there's nothing in it really that would transfer onto audit and scrutiny. Now, any other council, audit and scrutiny would play a critical role within the council in making sure that all the checks and balances are in place and governance structures are being abided by. But you get to the SNP leader, there is no job remit there, Jerry. So the SNP leader just gets an enhanced payment of 10 grand for being the SNP leader. So there's no requirement in there for them to be actively pursuing anything at all, right?
Why would you?
So let's do a breakdown then, because really in effect, what does that mean? Working for the MSP, working for the MP, being a councillor, having an enhanced payment, all these different kind of things. Well, if you start to chalk it up, then what you will find there's certainly something happening, Jerry. There's an incentive, and the incentive is to make sure that... I'm going to see if this will work, Jerry. Give me a second. The gravy train keeps rolling, Jerry. The gravy train keeps rolling. So, if you take... Let's use this as an example, right? And I'm only picking them out individually. That's no right, because ultimately what I have to say is as well, there'll be some councillors that work really, really hard, and these additionalities are all well earned. But I think that we have to look at the fact that if it's a case that you're sitting in a key position within the administration and you're getting that enhanced payment, well, let's take the Lord Provost for an example, right? Lord Provost gets 45 grand. He's also the manager, an office manager of a prominent MP in North Lanarkshire.
Which MP?
Pamela Nash. And if you're the office manager, and again, potentially, because this is what's all available online, then you're looking at a potential salary, anything at all, between an additional payment of 34 to 79,000. So 45, add your 34 to 79,000.
34 to 51.
Oh, sorry, 34 to 51. Sorry, I apologise. Total salary would be 79 to 96.
Wow.
Which is a staggering amount of money for being a councillor. Now, again, if you look at another one in here, so I've just broke it down into the top 5, Jerry, right? And it's in no particular order, but again, top 5, what that could be.
Can I just give some clarification to these additional figures? These are the scales. For that position. So that first one that you were talking about for the office manager in Pamela Nash's office, it would be a starting salary for a full-time equivalent of between 34 and 51.
Could be part-time. Let's be honest about that. So
but at the top of the scale.
Yeah. So as I said again, but if you look at the sort of the building up of salary that's available. Now, again, this is only political salaries I'm talking about. I'm not talking about anybody's personal careers or any of that kind of stuff, but I think it's interesting that we talk about a lack of democracy existing within North Lanarkshire all the time, and how the El Presidente has managed to square the peg and make sure that there is never any real opposition taking place, because ultimately if you had real opposition, anybody that would look at these standing orders, these rules, these excuses that come out of the Lord Provost's office all the time in relation to motions and competency, etc., they would be up in arms. They would be absolutely furious and approaching everybody in their ante in relation to the Scottish Government to come in and interject. But what we have is we then move on, and let's move on and let me pick somebody else, right? There's a young councillor that was elected, Andrew Bustard. and that young councillor gets a convene. No, he doesn't. He's a vice convener, so he starts up. He's 25, but then again, he works in Frank McNally's office as a parliamentary assistant, and that salary scales it in between 27 to 42,000. So for being a young lad, and I'm not being ageist, but really in effect, straight right into politics, straight right into the council, and then all of a sudden you're seeing yourself in a sizable chunk of change. Chris Costello, similar. So you've got him as Kenneth Stevenson, Shotts MP, and again within Shotts, this young lad, again, Chris, no offence, I'm no meaning to be ageist, but again elected into council, has a convenership. I don't know if the wellbeing convenership carries an enhanced payment, but let's say it does. Let's say he's on about 36,000. Then as his office manager for Kenny Stevenson, it's an additional 34 to 51,000. Again,
you're looking
sizable chunk of change, in between 70,000 and 81. Wow. Right? Yeah. So there's a significant,
that's for a full-time
87,
equivalent.
Sorry, for a full-time equivalent. Michael McBride, education convener, and again he's sitting about 36,000, but Kenny Stevenson's caseworker part-time, he notes. Right. So again, that salary scales between 10 and 20,000. Yeah,
right? Maybe a wee bit more. Maybe a wee bit more, but let's say potentially 46 to 56 grand. Yep.
Now let's jump on to the SNP, because the majority of them all seem to work for Fulton McGregor MSP, right? And Fulton, I'll give him his due. I don't know if it's a charity drive where he seems to take on Coatbridge councillors, but let's say Fulton's got the biggest heart out of them all, right?
Yeah.
So within Fulton's office, he's got the opposition leader who gets 36,000. We've kind of established that. She gets her 10 grand plus 25,000. But she's then a part-time caseworker for Fulton McGregor. Again, that range of 10,000 to 20,000 just for working for Fulton McGregor. She
used to work for Kirsten Oswald as well.
She used to work for a number of them, NEC, various other things. She's always very, very in there in relation to the establishment of the SNP, I hear. But anything between 46 and 56,000 pounds per year. Now that's the leader of the opposition, Jerry. Right, now we need to be very, very clear about that. That is the leader of the opposition. Takes enhanced payment coming for the administration, works in an MSP's office, and is enhancing her salary along the lines of that. Right. You've also got in there Councillor Alan Stubbs, who's Fulton's office manager. And again, Councillor Stubbs doesn't hold a prominent role within the administration, but £25,982 for being the councillor. Fulton's office manager, well, again, what's available online, anything at all full-time role between 34 and 47,000. So if part-time, you reduce that, but let's just say, again, potentially in between 60 and 73,000.
This doesn't stop individuals working elsewhere.
No, it does not. But this is the bit about this. How can you have effectively, now this isn't just him, I can go into Richard Sullivan, who is he's an Airdrie councillor, SNP, works for Jim Dornan as a senior caseworker, in between 30,000 and 40,000, and again add that additional 25, you're then looking at 55 to 75 could potentially be within that banding. And then we start bouncing all the way right through, even independents and those that sit in the NHS board and all this kind of stuff. So everybody seems to be getting a sizable chunk. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 councillors in North Lanarkshire do additional work for the MP or the MSP. They hold a place in administration or get an enhanced payment out of the back of politics. Now,
do you know what I think you would be? I think it's not beyond any reasonable interpretation that you might be in a position where you could be controlled by the party hacks, because
maybe
your living depends upon it. So your employment in an office, your additional payments as a convener or as an effective opposition leader.
I'm not saying that these people aren't worth this, Jerry. No, they could be working flat out 24 hours a day for all I know.
Without doubt.
But the issue that I have is when we see reports like this coming forward, and we've witnessed all the last couple of years in particular for you because you're new into it, we've witnessed an erosion of democracy taking place within that chamber. Now, again, this isn't a conspiracy. I think that this is basic black and white. This is the pattern that seems to be emerging within the councillors' expenses, etc., that's all coming forward. If you've got 22 councillors out of 77 all holding prominent roles within their own groups, because you've got the leader, the deputy leader of the SNP, a couple of councillors, former business managers. You've got Alan Masterton working for Jamie Hepburn as well. He used to carry a dual role, and that dual role was working for Stuart MacDonald and Jamie Hepburn.
Andy was the co-leader of the deputy leader of the SNP.
Now you've got the finance spokesperson Dennis Johnston, SNP MSP candidate for Kilsyth or Eastern Barnshire. I don't know what one it was. But he works in Jamie Hepburn's office, works in Stuart MacDonald's office. So if you look at the number of people that's currently working, 22, these are the most prominent individuals within the political groups, then where is that democratic debate coming from? Because you and I have both been told how it works in the Labour group, how it works as debate is shut down, you're only told what you need to know. And if it's a case that El Presidente presents it into the group, it's minimal information. So really, in effect, do we have a level playing field taking place? Do you think there's something, and again, not getting into the realms of conspiracy, but I think we need to be a pragmatist and a realist about this. Is it a case that nobody's going to open their mouth with regards to how the administration runs this council in case they jeopardise their big fat pay packets?
There is no question in my mind that money is a motivating factor in every aspect of life, and politics is no different, Greg. If your livelihood, your mortgage, your car payment, your holidays, your Christmas presents for all your wains, if that depends on your livelihood, then you're going to be very, very careful about which boat you decide to rock. If you're going to rock a boat, you might just settle in for a 5-year period and go, do you know what? I'm going to sit here like a good boy or girl. I'm going to do what I'm told. I'm not going to say anything that's going to lift my head above the parapet. I'm certainly not going to speak a podcast. I'm not coming on this.
Just for fairness and transparency, you're on my list and all.
I'm on the
list.
You're
on my list. Yeah. You've got £150,000 coming in per year. Your gold-plated toilet.
I wish.
But as I said again, for those listening at home, right, if it's a case that you want to get into politics, well, there's the incentive. So the incentive is clearly there. You'll get a reasonable, I wouldn't even say reasonable, a right good salary out the back of it, potentially, because the rewards are very, very high. And again, no wonder we see a lack of discourse, because...
Tell you what you won't be able to do, though. You won't be able to do what we do.
No.
You absolutely will not be able to speak freely about issues relating to your life as an elected member. You certainly won't be able to critique...
but...
Here's the approach of the administration.
Do you get individuals then? Do you pick individuals basically for the street that would have a lack of understanding of how that political framework's working? Because really, in effect, if you think about it, we were both in the SNP, and I'm not putting any critique on any colleague. There's still good people within the SNP. But the point that I would make is a lack of experience of these individuals, even in politics in general.
The Audit Scotland report sets that out as clear as the nose on your little face.
Wow. I've got a big nose, Jerry.
There is a high risk of elected members not understanding their remit or their role and responsibility.
But do you think that plays to it then? Because it keeps you distanced. You're not going to ask questions about working in the MSP or the MP's office.
Absolutely necessary.
And it keeps the gravy train rolling.
Keeps the gravy train rolling, and see, by the time you reach year 5... you might have a wee inkling about how it all works, and then the powerlessness is there. But by that time, you're just settling into the fact that, you know what, I'm going to stand again anyway, because I've been used to this. 25, 26 grand coming in, and I've got a mortgage to pay and all the rest of it. So you put your name in again, you're re-elected. You just do the same. You might find yourself right underneath that wee parapet, not saying too much, not being too loud. When you do speak, you'll not speak necessarily on the big issues, the controversial issues, and that might just be enough to see you through.
Well, we're going to jump to a quick break, Jerry, and then when we come back, we're going to be coming back to the calls. And a telephone number for anybody interested. Do you think your local council is worth their weight in gold? Do you think that these salaries that we're discussing tonight is far too grotesque? Why no call in? Let us know your views. Telephone number is 07379 399 228. That number again is 07379 399 228. And I have to put a disclaimer there as well that these individuals are not doing anything wrong.
Well, there's nothing illegal.
There's absolutely nothing wrong about that, because ultimately they could be worth their weight in gold. It's just something that just so happened to be a pattern that we noticed. But anyway, let's do this. And welcome back to What's the Point, Jerry. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. I don't know how that song ended up on, Jerry. It's completely and utterly coincidental.
Sometimes the
serendipity. That's what I would go with as well, Jerry. So just now the phone lines are opened up, so if you want to use a call, 07379 399 228, we'll be happy to take your call and your point. But before that, Jerry, a couple of big stories in the press this and last week then.
Yes.
So let's talk about Megan Gallagher first. Megan Gallagher was absolutely irate that she ran to the Wishaw Press to make sure that the Wishaw Press knew all about £440,000 in North Lanarkshire going to care workers in North Lanarkshire, and they were immigrant care workers, or was it?
Well, I remember
agency care workers.
I used to work in the health and social care sector, right, and I was involved in the recruitment of care workers for services to older people. And after the 2016 Brexit referendum, I began to see a tailing off of applicants coming through for jobs as support workers and carers.
Yep.
And that put a lot of pressure on the need for providers to meet their statutory obligations if you're a council, and indeed if you are contracted by the council to deliver care services on their behalf, you need to meet your contractual obligations as well. And sometimes if you can't recruit, you've got to go to the agency, and you've got to use agency staff, which can cost 2, maybe 3 times as much as you would pay your own staff.
Yep.
But that's because the Conservatives created the environment, the harsh environment, which meant that those individuals who came from Spain and Poland and Lithuania and were setting their lives up here in Scotland and who were going to be working in that particular sector found the environment too harsh, too cold, too brutal, and they decided that they were going to go back to Europe and other places. And from that moment on, we found it difficult to recruit. Oh. And that's why your agency bill is high.
Jerry, I find it absolutely staggering that Megan has a serious issue with this, because, again, Megan was the former leader in North Lanarkshire Tories within the council. Her deputy leader, who's Sandy Watson, is now the convener of audit and scrutiny. Yes. She was the convener of audit and scrutiny during her time as an elected member in North Lanarkshire. Surely, if you've got that much an issue with it, you would get your Tory colleagues to raise it in the chamber, or raise it as a motion, or do something, because we've got a list of motions coming forward to full council. Now there is only one that recognises. But then again, as a former Tory that put forward that motion, who then joined the SNP, but the Tories in general, she could have contacted them and says, raise that as a point of order, raise it as a motion. I want scrutiny on this. In fact, better still, Sandy, you're the chair of audit and scrutiny. Look into it. Why would she not do that?
Do you think that the when you make opposition politicians part of your administration, or you pay them an additional amount, do you think that acts as a disincentive perhaps to them raising these issues in the chamber? Issues that should rightly be raised.
I'm an old cynic. I'm definitely going to say that's the case. Because again, if you're looking to try and pull the wool out of people's eyes, yes, that's a good soundbite for her, but where's the pragmatic approach in this? Sandy Watson is the convener of audit and scrutiny. It's well within his gift to turn around and say, I'm putting an agenda item on the day's meeting, and we're going to discuss this money that's going to these care workers for these agency staff. Why not do that? Why not have that? Is it a case that his leader is not going to allow him to put it on the agenda because, again, it doesn't suit his agenda? And perhaps
no, I mean,
that's the case.
I think you're absolutely right, but the fundamental issue with and the hypocritical nature of Megan Gallagher's statement is that the problem is purely a Tory creation. It was created by the Tories. The brunt of it is being borne by local authorities up and down the country, and in the fourth biggest local authority area in Scotland, we are going to be hit hard by that.
You've just given me a lovely segue. Talk about hypocritical Conservatives. We're going to move nicely on to Douglas Ross and the allegations that he's made in relation to the one, the only, the man who's really just a naughty boy and lives in Cumbernauld, Jamie Hepburn, the MSP, former government minister.
Fessed up, no?
He's a big fesser.
Fessed up.
He's a big fesser.
I said, I've used language you shouldn't have.
Put my hand on his shoulder.
Put my hand on his
shoulder.
And that's it.
Now, again, rather bizarre, because if you take Douglas Ross's account of what took place, he was trying to quiz the government minister in relation to an issue to do with seagulls. Now, rather bizarre. I only wish we had more time to submit a motion, or else I'd have submitted a motion about seagulls to the council. But as I said again, Jerry, this is rather strange. Why would a government minister allow himself to be annoyed in such a fashion where he's basically just lost a government ministerial role? What's an MSP salary? 75,000. Hepburn will get an additionality as a government minister, taking him up to about 110,000. So 110 grand. He's lost about 40,000 off the back of that one incident. But do you not think it's hilarious that he resigned? He decided, he took the moral high ground and he's resigned. Now, here's the reality for folk. There is going to be an election in 2026, and if he gets back in, he'll get promoted straight into a government position.
He will, but is he going to be re-elected?
Well, if there's criminal proceedings, that would be the interesting part.
Well, I don't know if
pressed charges.
Has he pressed charges? I don't know either. So I think we wait with bated breath.
Or has a deal been done between the Tories and the SNP, do you think, potentially? I don't think Ross not to pursue that.
I don't think they would. I mean, the Tories do deals with the Labour Party and the Labour do deals with the Tory Party. But it doesn't seem to me to be the case that the SNP and the Tories find themselves as partners.
Now, given he's a government minister, this happened to an opposition MSP. The allegations have been made of assault, so I would imagine if Douglas Ross had the opportunity to press charges, he would press charges because it's going to give him significant headlines. But let's say it doesn't. Let's say it's so minuscule, and really in effect all Jamie did was say his expletives and few choice words, and that's really offended him. Where will that sit? Is there an independent parliamentary body that will sit with there, or does it just go straight to Standards Commission for Scotland? Because we've had our experience of that mob.
I think there's two aspects to that. There's as a minister, he's clearly breached the ministerial code. If the sanction or the heaviest sanction that could be imposed upon him would be that he would lose his position as a minister, then he's already fallen on that sword. So that ship may well have sailed. It's whether or not then the Ethical Standards Commissioner will pick this up if a complaint is made to the Standards Commission about the conduct of an elected member.
Well, again, you and I sat through, even to a certain degree, our good pal Davy Crichton's hearing, which was absolutely farcical, and a kind of court-style hearing.
Indeed.
To the Standards Commission. So the difference being in that,
we've actually left him alone for it.
we have for a wee while. I think we'll maybe come back and revisit him. But if you think about it, again, the SNP will have the opportunity, especially at that level, just to instruct a lawyer to get involved and answer the questions on their behalf. So this seems to be the way it works with mainstream political parties. There's legal advisors, there's obviously money there to pay for solicitors in relation to the elected members. So when you see the majority of Standards Commission cases coming forward, in Labour in particular, the only thing that they'll no defend is sexual claim. So they'll not touch anything.
Seems to be when you look at the cases that have gone, that seems to be the case.
Well, I had that actually as a point that was raised to me by a Labour councillor in Aberdeen. We did a survey, if you remember, of all elected members with regards to their experience. Everybody that had been through the Standards Commission process, we contacted them, we asked them questions about what they thought in relation to the Standards Commission for Scotland, and they gave their experience.
Were they very positive about
No, they actually weren't, and that resulted in a report going to the Scottish Parliament and I can't remember what the committee was, but they've never responded.
No, the corporate body.
But then you had Maggie Chapman make the remarks no long after. And again, the Standards Commission, because she was part of the corporate body, didn't take any action, because if you go and check the cases coming up, Maggie Chapman's never been on it. So there's a bit there, the hypocrisy that exists within it, but again, for a ministerial perspective, again, is it just a load of hot air? Is it just going to be a case that SNP will appoint a lawyer, Jamie will get halfway, and then 2026 comes, he'll be back into a government minister?
I think the damage has been done. I mean, I think even Douglas Ross would have to surrender that bad language is part of life. It's just part of life. Somebody putting their hand on your shoulder, depending on how that's done, whether it's done forcefully or aggressively.
You should come to your work for somebody to put their horn on you. That's for sure.
I know, but I've got colleagues in work who come up and they'll lean over me or they'll talk to me like that, because people are tactile. Do you know what I mean? People gesture towards each other. So it's not possible for us to have a rule in the workplace that's enforceable where touching is prohibited, because we just
watch in case the SNP and Coat Bridge decide to make a false allegation against you being tactile.
But I'm not particularly tactile. The people I work beside are tactile with, and that's so. If you had a hard and fast rule where you can't touch anyone, otherwise it's going to be an assault, it's not going to work. And I think Douglas Ross, on reflection, and I hope he does this on reflection, he lets this drop, not because I have any affection for
well, it was pretty quick at the starting block, was it?
Yeah, but he cries wolf. He cries wolf all the time. That's the nature of that particular type of conservative.
I wouldn't say that's the case. There's a Labour.
Well, no, I think. Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, but if you look at it as well, it seems to be something that's existence between Labour and the Conservatives, that manner of politics. Because again, if you go back, there was a prominent Labour MSP who's on the list, who was a former MP, made allegations against a Tory at that time for Aberdeen, an MP, and it turned out that these were fabricated. They claimed it was sexual assault in Strangers Bar. That seems to be something that's completely forgotten. And then when the commission, their independent watchdog, came in and investigated it, turned out to be fabricated.
I think the Tories will just look on this and go, one up. It's a goal. They've scored, and it was a absolutely opportunistic. The open goal created by Jamie Hepburn himself and gobbled up and finished spectacularly by Douglas Ross just in the last minute of extra time.
I've done it again. I've not turned the phone lines on.
You're going to get lynched, Mr. Lennon.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, we need to get a better system with taking calls, that's for sure, because I can't work this board. Right. So, but anyway, coming back onto the point, if it's a case that Hepburn walks away for this, what's his political career after it? What do you think?
I mean, he's going to have to seek re-election. I think
good people like Cumbernauld, do you think this will go down as like an ASBO badge? Do you think he can wear it with pride, or do you think it's a case that he's absolutely embarrassed himself?
I think among I think that particular bill that went through, or that was being discussed in that day, was pretty hot. So I think there was tensions around that, given the subject matter. And I think they were sore about it. And
do you know, I think it's strange when you watch Holyrood, or else even when you watch Westminster, the level of debate that you get, the actual opposition groups all trying to take on the government at a time and everything else, and then you look at that in comparison to North Lanarkshire, there is absolutely no discourse, but be no appetite for opposition groups to take on that administration. It seems as if everything's pre-baked. Now, again, what I mean by that is everything that we've ever seen the SNP do in a retaliation or something to do with a Labour group, you can clearly tell that there's a leaders' meeting taking place with the three of them. And agreements are being made, or people are being fed lines and stuff. It's canned outrage all the time.
Yeah,
It seems to me that there's definitely something in existence and you're earning your wages.
So it's my firm belief, given what I've experienced in the chamber, that certain decisions will be stitched up between the leader of the administration, the leader of the SNP, the leader of the Conservatives, and that's fairly clear, at least to my mind, anyway. And that the only dissenting voices that you'll get is our own voices, probably Robbie McKendrick's now and again, and Claire Williams's now and again.
Here's a question for you: Do you think that our MSPs play a critical scrutiny role within North Lanarkshire? And what I mean by that is, do you ever see them coming out and publicly calling the council for the administration for what it is? Do you ever see them taking Jim Logue to task?
No.
Do you ever see anything at all? Because if you think about it, I've just named, right, let's say out that 22 councillors, there's about 13 of them or 12 of them that all work for the SNP MSPs.
No.
So they've got their ear to the ground. They definitely know what's happening in the local authority.
But they won't. But we kind of discussed this last week. The reason why they won't do it, and they've had ample opportunities.
No, but what I'm saying is they know exactly what's taking place within North Lanarkshire.
Yes, they do.
Yes,
they do, and it will be discussed at branch meetings.
Yep.
But because of the fantasy that exists, and we'll speak about the SNP North Lanarkshire group, because of the fantasy that exists within their minds that they are the opposition, they are the administration in waiting. They don't want to be overly critical of any decisions that are made by the administration, because that in turn potentially would impact on the decisions that have been made by officers through delegated authority and the like. And they don't want to be coming in to an administration potentially and having a tough time and not having good relationships. So it's in their interest to say nothing. Yeah. And it kills debate. It makes politics dull. Yeah. It deprives communities of the to and fro that politics should, and the representation that should be there, and instead it just leaves communities with elected members who will watch as the powers that the elected members have and had is diminished to the point where your elected member isn't worth very much. All they can do is just say it's a housing issue, Greg. Yeah. The most that they can do is say, "Oh, I'll get you a full review," and that's it. They can't really fight your corner.
Well, Jerry, you'll be glad to hear that's us ran out of time.
Again, time flies when you're having fun.
And you'll notice yourself we're missing our good pal this week, Councillor David Crichton, who has decided that he went to the Speedway tonight instead of coming on here with us. But anyway, I'm sure we'll give him some stick for that.
He'll get it.
So to quote that very famous line for Jerry Maguire, Jerry, show me the money.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. This has been What's the Point? Have a lovely night and we'll see you next week.
All the best.